Was all of the censorship online in order to program the AI to the way they wanted the AI to get programmed? The reason I say this is that I've seen a few articles over the years that said that when AI is left to itself without influencing it, that AI generally, not so much generally, but a few times AI became far right. And so I guess they didn't want a far right AI, so they had to remove all the hard far right perspectives from the internet while they finished getting the finishing touches on their little, I'm not saying it's ChatGPT or OpenAI, but they rounded everybody up on October 15, 2020. And you notice their data set goes to I think it's September 2021. So regardless, I think it's pretty funny if that's the case. They had to take everybody offline so that they could get the AI that they wanted. Which makes you wonder, is it the natural logical conclusion then, if the AI on its own, or is it that so much people on the internet were far right? I don't know. It's just an interesting theory. And then you wonder, all right, so then is this artificial intelligence artificial intelligence in that it's not getting the far right perspective? And if the far right perspective is dominant on the internet, is it due to the quantity or the logic behind it? Is it more common sense or is it more logic or whatever? I don't really care. I don't like censorship though. And whenever censorship is happening, I'm always wondering, why? Why are they doing that? And another question that I want you to ask people is, Elon bought Twitter, or Elon took over Twitter after the 2022 election, right? So the damage was already done. And same with 2020. So you had two elections that, well, as far as Arizona goes, I don't know if you guys saw this past week on Friday, that testimony that 40 members of the Arizona government are bought and paid for by the Sinaloa cartel. So in that case, and if I seem like it's because, with Carrie Lake, she tweeted every day since November about her opinion of the outcome of the Arizona election. And, she's using the RIGGED word. I don't know if we're allowed to say that. But I used to read the comments, and all the comments were like, you lost, grow up, blah, blah. And it's like, wait a minute here. If 40 members are part of a racketeering operation where they're laundering money through the through housing deeds and mortgages, then it's a legit thing to say. So, just saying. Oh, and so the thing with Donald Trump, when people say, oh no, it's like, why did they go so out of their way to stop him? Regardless if you like him or not, regardless if you vote or not. What? I mean, they went so nutty to the point where they created a world pandemic scamdemic. Now, there was more than one reason, more than just Trump. There was, leading up to that pandemic plan, whatever you want to call it, there was a major uprising in Hong Kong, and those people were not going home. And there was a 50-plus week Yellow Jacket revolt in France. Not really a revolt, but a protest that went on for 50-plus weeks, the Yellow Jackets, or the Yellow Vests, whatever they're called. And I remembered seeing the France and the Hong Kong, and I thought, how are they going to resolve, when I say how they're going to resolve this, I was happy about these protests, but at the same time, I'm realizing the powers that be do what the powers that be do. And I remember thinking, in this day and age of everybody having a cell phone camera and live streaming, how are they going to dissent the opposition and get away with it? I'm like, I don't know. They'd probably have to say there's some kind of airborne virus around, make everybody go home. Well, they did it. And they did it, and I kept track. It became the number one news story in the United States the day after the impeachment verdict from the Donald Trump impeachment. So again, for the conspiracy theorists out there, again, this isn't political, this is conspiracy theory. It's like, all right, so the day after the impeachment verdict, front and center comes C-19, which, in addition to creating a voting scenario for the USA, it also enabled, and it wasn't just Hong Kong and it wasn't just France, it was also, I think the Netherlands had some kind of farmers' rebellion, and I think Iran had something, Brazil had something, Italy had something. So all of these worldwide revolutions that were happening all got squashed in a single event, including USA. So ask your friends, why did they go so far out of their way to stop Trump? I mean, he's just a stupid guy, right? He's just a nobody, right? What were they really trying to stop? I just want them to say it. I know they did it, just admit it. But what? Why? Why did they go to such extremes? Anyway, that's that one. A video I made a while back, I talked about how I noticed people in truthing circles were kind of locked in to a control drama of not letting go of C-19. Now, in ways, it's good because accountability needs to be had for, and we need to investigate what the heck the whole thing was really about. We'll never really find out. The television's never going to admit what they did. But outside of it's good to press for answers, we kind of got a victory with the mass formation psychosis by Dr. Malone and a couple other events, and the comedians, and even Rappaport kind of threw it up. And then recently the guy that made Dilbert, Scott Adams, he was like, all right, you guys won. But leading up to that, a lot of people couldn't let it go. And because they were in a control drama, it was like for 2 years they were trying so hard to beat it that they finally beat it, and they didn't realize like their whole life became consumed with it. And so I forgot how I phrased it, but I found somebody came up with a much better way to say what I was trying to say. So whereas the opposition, they always support the current thing and they get mocked for that. There's a lot of memes of I support the current thing, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's C-19, whether it's whatever thing they had. Somebody said, yeah, but you oppose the current thing. No matter what the current thing is, you oppose it. I'm not making fun of you personally because for the most part, I oppose the current thing, whatever the current thing is as well. Not just to be in opposition, but generally speaking, yeah, I oppose the current thing too. I don't oppose it just to oppose it. For the most part, I oppose the current thing. So, but the key is, are you opposing the current thing just because it's the current thing, or do you actually oppose it? And it's the same with the people that support the current thing. They just support the current thing to be the good pet. I'm just saying, make sure that you're not just falling into the control drama of just opposing the current thing to be the equivalent kind of person that's supporting the current thing. Make sure that you actually oppose the current thing. And another thing I noticed is, you know, most of TV is outrage, not even TV, most of the media and the news, it's outrage culture or outrage industry. Back in 2000, when I was getting the media training, there was a couple things they told us about was outrage sells. That the study actually said, studies show that Americans like to anger themselves when they read headlines. So we were trained to write headlines that trigger the audience. That'll either in present day get you the click, or back then get you the people would read those headlines. And just make sure that you're not falling into the control drama of constantly wanting to outrage yourself. I noticed back in like 2011 that, you know, I had a habit when I would wake up, I'd go to Drudge Report. This is before Drudge sold out. And anytime I click on Drudge, I'd realize the headline pissed me off and it like put me in a bad mood. And so I had to condition myself to just like not go visit websites asking myself, like, am I just clicking these things? Am I trying to anger myself? And I'm not saying just avoid all media and just turn it off, although that is a good idea. I'm just saying, check yourself. Are you just trying to anger yourself? Just like that studies that I read in 2000, studies show Americans like to get, it's not that they like it, it's just that you respond to outrage. And as much as I like Tucker Carlson, sometimes when I look at his show, I'm like, gee, or Paul Joseph Watson, it's like, hey, what could we be angry about today? What did the opposition do that's going to anger me today? So sell an outrage, and not only that, make sure that if you do like the outrage culture, that you find a way to get into the silo of the opposition to find out what they're being outraged with. And so what I mean by that is, because I like to talk to people on the other side, and they're always whining about Mitch McConnell. And I'm like, you realize that most people in MAGA don't like Mitch McConnell either? Like, we don't like Mitt Romney either. So, like, if Mitt Romney does something or Mitch McConnell does something, it's not like we like those guys anyway. Like, they're as much of our enemy, if not more enemy than the way you guys see them. In fact, they're more on your side. And so then the figures that the right get shown, like AOC and Nancy Pelosi, a lot of people on the left don't even care about Nancy Pelosi. They're like, Nancy Pelosi, she's like old and senile. They see her the same exact way, but they're getting fed one thing, we're getting fed another thing. And so the boogeymen, the people on the right get shown, are a non-factor to people on the left. So, by the way, I do know that voting and the political parties, it's the uniparty, it's all rigged, it's all fake, it's all this, it's all I know. But these are the topics that people discuss, and this is what shapes their perspective. This is the people that are in the news. These are the actors that are on the stage. And so the key is to navigate through these actors that we have to then learn the concept to apply to all things. So the same tricks they're going to use, the same politricks they're going to use are going to be the same entertainment tricks with the entertainers and the celebrities. It's going to be the same tactics that they use in the corporate culture with their CEOs and whoever. Everybody's an actor. It's a game, like Dick Gregory used to say. But the key is to not fall for the traps of the outrage culture unless you know you're doing it and like it. So I have some friends that they do know they're engaging in that, and they're happy doing that. Like, that's their pastime. That's the thing that they do. Even though most of the stories, if not all, are just misdirections, they like trying to solve the riddle of the misdirection to figure out how the plot of the story goes. Okay? That's what they like. I'm just trying to solve the riddles. And also, just so you know, the polarization, that was all done on purpose. And I'm not saying that theoretically. Like, we were literally told that in the media, the job is to polarize the audience. It's not to be objective. It's to sell an audience share to the advertiser. Now, that's not just for TV news, but that's also for the programming. And all the programming is designed to create behaviors and to create attitudes and to have product placement and to sell products. But it's not always just making a sale with products. It's also to sell the attitudes and the behaviors, the way that you perceive things, your perception of things. So it's perception management. And the perception management helps the corporations and big pharma and all that. It happens in so many subtle ways that's why I made the video of the 115 plus manipulation tactics utilized by the media, and that list is not even complete. Those are just the ones that I particularly had to come across. There's real subtle ones as well. One of the things we do now is we push back with the same demand for evidence that the normies make towards the truthers. And so when they say to me about, my memories of choosing my life in another dimension, that I'm wrong, that I'm delusional, or I'm having a false memory or whatever, it's like, okay, cool. What is your memory? Where do you come from? And the other part is really it's for the people that don't believe in an afterlife and only believe that this is all that there is. You have one life. If they really were YOLO, you only live once. If they really were YOLO, why would anybody follow the rules and the laws? You only live once. So why are you behaving? Why are you conforming? Why are you falling in line if you're really YOLO? If people really believe that, they would just be going crazy. Now, what somebody would say is like, no, John, they're just really mind controlled. You just fail to realize how mind controlled they are. Oh, okay. Yeah, because if they were left up to their own thing, they definitely, if they really thought this was the only life they had to live, they would be going YOLO. I've even had a guy to say to me, he said, you know, John, it's to all of our safety that our minds are totally, completely, and thoroughly enslaved. If you believe that this is your only life, this is all that there is to it. There is no afterlife. There is no mind, body, spirit, trinity, or body, soul duality. Why aren't you YOLO? Why are you conforming? Are you just that good of a person? Are you that good for goodness sake? I want to also let you guys know, if you haven't figured it out yet, aside from the whole choosing your life thing, you're choosing my life thing that I push all the time, a major thing, and also artificial scarcity. Obviously, those are the two major topics that I talk about. But the third one that I hope is obvious by now, but if it's not, I want to spell this out because I like to be completely transparent about my agenda, about what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to persuade. I don't really use techniques to persuade other than I don't even use charisma, to be honest. I just talk, and I'm not using persuasion. Usually I just do it off the top of my head, so I'm not crafting some kind of way to... I don't like manipulation. I don't like to be manipulated. I've been manipulated hardcore when I was young and naive and oblivious. I grew up in a nice house with two honest parents, and they always had my best interests in mind, and they never really tried to trick me. They did on purpose, other than like Santa Claus. But outside of that, they were always... they weren't trying to deceive me. The rest of the world was, but not necessarily after me personally. They're just deceitful and manipulative in their ways. I want to remove everybody's ability to manipulate other people, innocent people. Okay? It's same with criminals. I'm like, hey, criminals, let's create an area for criminals to do criminal stuff with other criminals. But innocent people, I want left alone, and I want punishments against innocent. If you commit crimes against innocent people, they should be severe. If it's criminal against criminal, fine. Manipulators, I see the manipulation all the time, just with like online scams. I live in Florida. There's a large elderly population that didn't grow up with technology, and they're preyed upon all the time. And not only with the online stuff, but with sales calls, some old people live by themselves and they get preyed upon. Back when I was 19, I realized that I had been taken advantage of and manipulated by somebody. And so then I made it like my quest in life to discover all the forms of manipulation and expose them. And I do it in impolite ways. For instance, like if someone is attempting to manipulate me, I identify out loud to them the manipulation strategy that they're utilizing and what their next 2 or 3 steps probably are, just to watch their reaction. And they usually do it. They do a denial, and they laugh it off, or they just slyly grin. But a lot of these videos are to inform the audience of manipulation tactics, and I want all manipulation tactics revealed and out there and understood by everybody, so that when people continuously utilize these manipulation tactics, as long as there's an informed public that identifies and recognizes the manipulation, then it's fair game. And gaslighting was a big part of it. And I also found a lot of the people that did manipulate We're generally on the left, and that's why I have a negative bias towards the left. Not to say that the right hasn't manipulated me, because they have too. But generally, those people didn't turn out to be really on the right. They turned out to be, rhino globalists. So withholding of someone's agenda and intention, to me, that's manipulation. Other people will say, like, no, people survive by persuasion and survive by, white lies, manipulation. In my book, that's no good. When I was a kid, if I was playing cards, I would show everybody my cards. The other kids are like, you can't see my cards. You can't see my cards. And I'm like, dude, you can see my cards, man. I'm not hiding anything. I am an open book. Now, I do understand some people live in circumstances where they have to, hide what's going on because their lives are at danger. I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about everyday manipulators, that hustlers and people that manipulate to manipulate. I'm against that, and I want to expose every little thing that you do and warn every single innocent person about your behavior because it's inappropriate, and unless you're doing it for survival. And even then, whatevs. So I just want to make this abundantly clear. I am against manipulation. I'm against psychological manipulation. I'm against behavior modification if it's not disclosed. I'm against all kinds of psychological deception. And I want to expose it all so that everybody knows what's going on. Media manipulation, psychological manipulation, deception, all these tactics, because they've been used against me. And the funny part, the sad part, is that it was over 20 years ago at this point, and I still haven't gotten over it. So a lot of the tactics of the left, as far as the denial, before Bernie Sanders, they used to deny what their ideology was. After Bernie, they can't because the plausible deniability was gone. It's not so much that you're allowed to believe whatever you want. There's freedom of speech. But if I identify like your behavior, like, hey, it's looking a lot like Marxism there. The denial is denying my reality. That's gaslighting. So there's that one. If someone's behaving like a fascist, I'm going to call them out on that too. If anybody's behaving like any kind of preset, I just want to identify, like, okay, this is your ideology. This is why your position is this. So really, it's the ideologies. And when I got the INWO cards and I got to see how many different factions there were, I mean, it blew my mind. But then a lot of stuff started to become clear to me. I'm like, wow, all of these factions are all utilizing different tactics to push their little special interest group through their ideology, their agenda. So just know that you're being faced with so many agendas all at once. By the way, there's a cardinal in the background. I'd show it to you, but I have everything on the tripod all nice. He's the one making all the noise. I used to think cardinals were beautiful, but this particular cardinal, every single day, he's kind of annoying. He's still pretty, but he's kind of annoying. He's kind of ruined it for cardinals for me.